In this video, I would like to discuss linking controls and also cover the new multi-link feature. Linking can be thought of similar to routing. All we're doing when we link something together is making a connection. In this respect, we are routing controls to one another. The way that it's different is that when we're routing, we're usually sending a signal through something, like a plugin. When we're linking, we're making a connection that forms a shared control among different pieces. In other words, routing is going through and linking is going to. Now, we have a few different types of linking setups, but mainly you're going to be linking to either an internal controller, such as the Fruity Peak controller, or through external hardware, such as a MIDI keyboard. Now, we've already taken a look at one type of linking, and that's automation. When we create an automation clip, we're essentially linking a control to a series of curves which we determine by drawing them out on the automation clip. So we're linking a control to a set of commands given by the automation clip. This is also true of the event editor. When we edit events, the link is made between the control we want moved and the curves that we draw out. But we also have some tools to create links which do more than just follow the path that we draw out. Sometimes we want a control to be affected by something else, like the peak level of audio going through that control. In this sense, we would be combining automation with linking. For example, if I had a kick drum and a bass, and I wanted the bass to lower its volume when the kick hit and then raise back up, I would need to link control so that the bass volume was related to the kick volume, and anytime the kick volume reached a certain point, the bass volume would lower and then raise back up, creating a ducking effect. For things like this, we have different internal controllers within FL Studio. These are the Fruity Peak controller, the envelope controller, the formula controller, the keyboard controller, and the XY controller. Now, we can link just about any controls within FL Studio, like knobs and sliders, as well as most VST controls. To make a link, we have a few options. The first is to right-click on a control and select Link to Controller. This will bring up a panel which will allow us to select our linking options, which we'll cover shortly. We can also use the multi-link feature, which is new to FL Studio 8. The way this works is you left-click on the icon up here in the recording panel. While this icon is switched on, you can tweak all of the controls you plan to link. Once you've tweaked all of the controls you're planning to create links for, you can turn off the multi-link option, and the linking panel will show up. Finally, you can link VST plugins by tweaking a control on a VST plugin, then opening the wrapper menu in the top left-hand corner and select Last Tweak Control, and then Link to Controller. This is the same process for creating an automation clip from a VST control, only you would select Create Automation Clip. If you're using a MIDI controller, you can also tweak controls on the hardware using the multi-link feature. Now, when linking controls, you have to have a controller to link to somewhere in your project. If you don't, and you try to create a link using any of these methods, the Link to Controller screen won't show any controllers to link to. If you have automation clips created, you can link to those even without any other controllers, but in order to create an internal link, you must have a controller inserted. So we'll insert a controller, in this case the Fruity Peak controller, on a mixer track, and then when we create a link, we'll see the options for the internal controllers. In this list, we see things that we can link to. In this case, we have any automation clips, as well as the various controls of the Peak controller. We'll cover the different controllers a little bit more in depth in another tutorial, but for now, I want you to see how to create links. Now, I want to go over the linking panel here so that we know what each part does. First, we have the New Link option. The program automatically assumes a new link is to be made, otherwise we can select from a list of links that have already been created if there are any. You may want to select a link that has already been created if you're linking numerous controls to the same target. The Remove Conflicts button, when turned on, will cancel out any previous links that have been made to that control. If you want to link multiple controls to the same target, you will need to keep this option off. For instance, if I want to link all of my channel volume knobs to the same target, the program will tell me there is a conflict because the target already has something linked to it. so I will ignore the conflicts and leave the button off in order to link more than one channel volume knob to the target. Next, we have our MIDI controller info. This applies if you're using a MIDI controller, and you can set your MIDI channel and continuous control here. Leaving the auto detect on will allow you to move a control on your hardware for detection. The Omni switch will link the hardware control to the selected channel's control for which you are setting. What I mean is, say you're linking a volume knob on a channel. With the Omni turned on, the hardware will control the volume knob of whatever channel you have selected, rather than just the original knob. Below this, we have the internal controller selection list. Again, this allows you to select any controller parameters available, as well as link to automation clips you may have already created. The Record Automation feature will record the movements of your controls when you play back, allowing for an automation clip to be created. This is good if you want to fine-tune automation later. An example would be, say I wanted to have a synth pulse in time with the drum beat. I would set up the P controller, so now when I play back, the synth will pulse automatically according to my settings. But if I wanted the synth to pulse every other bar, I would need to choose Record Automation and then play the track. This will create the automation clip for me so that I can go back and edit it later to make it only pulse every 4 bars. The next area is the mapping formula. This tells FL Studio how you want the data processed. You can play around with these and take a look at the help file to see the exact specifications for each one, but basically these options tell the different controllers how to handle the movements to be made. Default assumes a forward moving motion, while inverted assumes an inverse movement. So if I link a volume knob to a kick drum and I have it set to default mapping, the volume knob will turn up each time the kick drum hits. If I have it set on inverted, each time the kick drum hits, the volume knob will turn down. We'll take a closer look at this in the next video. You can also enter in a custom formula in the text box where the default is input. Again, this is something we'll discuss coming up. We also have an option to smooth out the movements of our linking. This option will essentially allow for smoother transitions between movements to avoid abrupt sound changes. Finally, we have a reset and an accept button. Accept will create the linking scheme we have just created. Reset will reset all options and start back from scratch. One final thing to note. When you use the multi-link feature, you will have a chronological list of controls you selected when you unticked the multi-link box. This means that you will need to be prepared for what you are planning to link. If you select multi-link and then move a bunch of controls, then turn it off, the linking panel will appear and you will be given the option to begin linking. Once you press accept for the first control, the panel will bring up the next control you tweaked and ask you to link it, and so on until you have linked all of the controls you have tweaked. This also applies if you select Link All Parameters from a plugin wrapper menu. So we'll cover the specifics of some of the linking controller tools in the next video, but for now, I want you to get comfortable with the idea of linking as well as the concept. All we're doing is connecting a control in FL Studio to another control, so when one does something, the other responds. You'll get a better sense of how linking is useful in the next tutorial. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.